You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I'll introduce members of the commission and staff. To my far right, we have Commission Member Joe Chadwick. Next to Joe is Commission Member Joe Viuzzo. Turning the corner, we have Commission Member Fred Russo. To my left, we have Commission Member Marcy Pelusi. Our staff this evening is our Town Planner Harry Smith, our Assistant Planner Evan Brining, and our Clerk Recording Secretary Michelle Martin. I am Chuck Andrus, Chair. We will follow our normal format for public hearing, but before I even tell you what that is, I'm going to ask our Secretary to read the notice.
The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, September 16th at 8 p.m. in person at the Branford Fire Headquarters, 45 North Main Street, Branford, Connecticut, to consider the following. 1. Application number 21-7.4, special exception for grading, section 6.8, for a car wash located at 54 and 60 North Main Street. Nick Magnata applicant, John and Rachel Brazili owners. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard and written communications will be received. A copy of the application is on file in the Planning and Zoning Commissioner's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Branford.
Thank you, Marcy. Also joining us is Commission Member Massimo Liguri. We'll follow a normal format for public hearings. By the way, we have an agenda up here and some copies of staff reports. Our normal format for public hearings is the applicant goes first, makes its presentation, including any consultants that may have it wish to explain it. At that point, we turn it over to the commission and staff. Usually have a summary of a staff report, questions, comments from commission members. At that point, we'll open it up to the public. We'll ask you to come forward. You ask that you state your name and address for the record, make your comments. You can grab a microphone over here or speak at the podium. I'm not sure if that one's set up, but we'll figure that out. And after that point, we allow the applicant to respond to public comments. We may or may not close a public hearing depending on how it goes. I think on some of these, one of these at least, I know it's a continuation of a public hearing. So with that, we'll start going through our agenda. Item number 1 is Saeed Sami, the applicant, Oil Baron Inc., Robert Hartman owner, 49 Leeds Island Road. The special exception, modification, expand convenience store. And I understand that this is, we were waiting for a landscape plan and some materials have just come in, but we haven't had a chance to review them. Is that correct?
Correct. We received all the application materials, and we should be able to do our review before the next meeting.
Okay. So if you're here on that item, this is 49 Leeds Island Road, the special exception modification to expand the convenience store. We're going to continue that one to our next meeting, which is going to be on October 7th right here at this location. Is anyone here on that? Okay. So we will continue item number 1 to our October 7th meeting. That brings us then to item number 2, which is ALMR LLC, Mr. Atri, applicant owner, 49 3 Elm Road, special exception modification, multifamily dwelling. And again, this one, I believe we have scheduled a public hearing for our October 7th meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. The applicant, in order to be able to do what he's proposing to do to the building, make the modification, will need a variance, and that's a subject of the ZBA meeting this month. So we'll have to have the public hearing on the 7th instead of tonight. Okay,
so this one actually we haven't even opened yet, but that
Correct.
One we'll open that public hearing. If you're on that one, that will take place also on October 7th. That brings us then to items number 3 and 4, which are the same use application. That is Nick Magnota, applicant, John and Rachel Brazil, owners, care of attorney Joseph Porter, owner, 54 and 60 North Main Street. Special exception for car wash and a special exception for grading. Are the applicants ready to proceed on that one?
We are. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
A little louder, maybe?
Push the button.
But
It should be on.
It's
yeah.
green.
Yeah, it should be working.
Okay. Good. Okay. Good evening. My name is Joe Porto. I practice law with Perrette, Porto, Parisi, and Caldwell. Our office is located in Hampden, and I represent the applicant, Nick Magnotta. Mr. Magnotta is here this evening, as is the project engineer, Jim Preety. I would like to just go over some housekeeping matters with the Commission. The property, of course, is located at 5460 North Main Street, generally across the street from the building that we're in. The zone is a business local zone, and the property is approximately 2.8 acres in size. It's a relatively large piece of property. A significant portion of the property is not developable because there are some wetlands. There is a section of the property that's currently developed, has a small building on it. It is in reasonably poor condition. That building will be removed. With regard to wetlands, in August, we received approval from the Wetlands Commission for this project, and more recently received approval from the WPCA. Mr. Preety, of course, will go over the engineering plans, the curb cuts, which will be created to allow for a orderly flow of traffic on the property, designated entrance and exit points on the property. I believe presently it is just one large curb cut as the property exists. With regard to the property itself, I mentioned in reasonably poor condition. This will certainly be an improvement. There's a detailed landscaping plan. The building that is there will be removed, and in its place we propose an express car wash. This is a different model than the car washes that people are generally accustomed to. With the express car wash, there's essentially very little to no interaction with employees. There are vacuums on the site, and we'll go over that with you, but people do not get out of their car. This is not a wash where you get out of your car and an employee takes the car and vacuums the car and does the windows. You come up to a kiosk. You are prompted to pay either by card or debit. A toll gate goes up. You go into the wash. You're directed into the wash by an employee to make sure the wheels align with the conveyor belt. The vehicle moves through the wash and then leaves the site, or it can continue into the interior portion of the site if the operator so chooses, and make use of the free vacuum that is there. We have reviewed staff comments. Again, Mr. Preety will go over the site in great detail. We are generally aware of a couple points of concern. One has to do with parking and the other with queuing. I would like to briefly address those points, and then to the extent the Commission has more questions, address those after Mr. Preety presents. With regard to parking, we anticipate up to 2 employees. We believe there will be sufficient parking for the 2 employees in the area designated by the side of the building for the dumpster. To the extent only 1 space is allowed there, there will be an opportunity for 1 employee to also park in one of the 12 areas called out for the vacuum area, again in the interior of the site. With regard to queuing, the plan indicates that we can queue up to 11 cars from the entrance on North Main Street. Now, how we arrived at that, because I do not believe the regulations speak directly to a car wash, and certainly not an express car wash. Through our research, the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation has information with regard to a vehicle count for this area of North Main Street being approximately 18,000 vehicles per day. Mr. Magnotta will explain to you, and he has a long history in the car wash business. He owns a car wash in Hampden, owns one in Derby. His father owns one in New Haven. He's spent his entire adult life in the car wash business and is extremely well versed and how they operate, and he also has a business with regard to repairing and installing car wash equipment. Ideally, if a car wash can grab 0.5% of the daily traffic count, that would be a good day. By my math, 0.5% of the 18,000 cars that pass by this area is approximately 90 cars. If I didn't mention, the hours of operation will be Monday through Saturday from 8 to 7, Sunday from 8 to 6. The wash will be open minimally 10 hours a day. Again, if there's 90 cars that come in, wash is open for 10 hours a day. That's 90 cars and be 9 cars an hour, and we can certainly queue up to 11. So if by chance all the cars that we would anticipate washing in 1 hour came at one time, we would be able to queue those 9 cars. So with that, and I'm sure the commission will have some more questions, again, I just wanted to give an overview of the application, have Mr. Preety go through the plans in some more detail, and then we will be here to respond to any questions.
I like to be right up front. Jim Preddy, Criscollo Engineering, here in Branford. As Attorney Pardo has kind of briefly described, this is 54 and 60 North Main Street, which are the abandoned, well, not abandoned, vacant properties across the street that at one time was a paving company. Outlined in red here is the outline of the 2 properties. There is a finger that does touch Cherry Hill Road, and this is where the animal hospital is on the corner. Outlined in green here is the extensive wetland corridor that goes through. The stream that actually runs under the road and through the yard over here, and then back under Route 1 somewhere down the street. Existing building, there's an existing concrete block retaining wall along the edge of the wetland here, and then there's a pile of dirt that has some pieces of steel and things sticking out of it, with some debris. And then all this is processed stone. We actually dug some test pits, and it's processed stone for about 4 or 5 feet deep. Anecdotally, we heard that the original owner here had ties to someone at Tilcon, and they used to get all the leftovers. So it was just stone and stone and stone. It got built up over the years. Let's go to this one. So what we're proposing is this single bay tunnel that's 120 feet long, 18 feet wide, with a mechanical room on the back, and then a little area for an office that's, again, on the driver's side as you would pull in. The proposal is to have one entrance. So I will go back, actually. I'll show the queue. The one entrance at this end, and we show the 11 cars that we could stack in the queuing lane, as Attorney Pardo has mentioned. There is a bailout lane, so if you get up to the building and change your mind, you can get out, but you would go through the tunnel, and then either exit. There's a one-way exit, which is right across from Chidsey Drive, or like as he mentioned, you can come through here and come into one of the vacuum stalls and then go back out this, again, the same entrance, the exit that is being used for the bailout lane. We have provisions for holding tanks. There's not holding tanks, more like grit chambers. There's 3 of them in series that take the runoff from inside the tunnel, because they do recycle a good portion of the water, so the water has to get cleaned, and then they do recycle quite a bit of it, but ultimately there is a connection to the sewer main and Route 1, which, as mentioned, we've already gotten approval for, subject to a signed agreement. Currently, this site pitches from the road all the way back to, and runs off into the wetlands. We're actually picking up the back of this a little bit and kind of directing the water toward a couple of inlet areas and then to a water quality basin at the far end to basically clean up the water that runs off the site now. We do actually have a little bit less impervious area that currently exists on the site, so we are kind of reducing it by some. City water, city gas. There is a gravel area that's behind the building for access to the mechanical room. If they have to fix a piece of equipment or whatever, which would also truly, in truth, provide a couple of spaces for employees to park back there. But again, there are spaces in the front. We do have a landscaping plan that was done by Larry Appleton. We're showing some street trees, again, on the property so that, you know, basically the state DOT doesn't want them on their property anyway, but what it does, you know, allow us is that when they pull up to the stop bar to stop and look, you're actually in front of the trees, so it doesn't create a sightline issue. Some replanting of we're actually moving that wall back. That wall, the existing wall, is kind of the line in the sand for our wetland application. We're actually pulling it back a little bit so that when they take the old block out, they'll be able to basically put some topsoil and some like conservation mix on the other side of the wall to create a little bit of a buffer from what's there now. And then some other plantings along the front of the building and some along behind the dumpster. We're also providing some plantings along the edge, which really the only neighbor is this other commercial property that's over here. We did provide a lighting plan done by Sound Lighting, or they provided it to us by Illuminate. I think we meet the criteria there. There was some question about the lights that are part of the vacuum apparatus, but they could actually, I'm told they could actually be adjusted down, or even if it's a really a real issue, they could be changed to not function the way they were in the picture. Basically, they could turn them off. So again, we've been through Wetlands quite a number of meetings, and this got massaged a little bit, and they were ultimately happy with it because we're cleaning up a site that's been kind of derelict for a number of years. And that's, I guess I'll take if there's any site-related questions that we're looking at.
What's the elevation change between the back of the building ground and what's the elevation change between the back of the building ground and the existing wetland line? You said, because you said there was a wall. Is that a retaining wall, or is that just a separation?
No, it's a retaining wall. I believe it's no more than 3 feet anywhere. Yeah, so it's no more than 3 feet high at any point.
And then you've got that area where you've got existing trees to remain in the front.
Yeah, there's a cluster here.
Yeah, but it looks like there's quite a bit of trees to the left of it where the crushed stone bottom is and the queuing. I'm just curious how many, mature trees might be in there. Was that ever surveyed?
It's not on the survey, and I could clarify that, but to my recollection, when we walked the site, there was a lot of sapling, a lot of young trees that are in there. I think this had all been cleared at one point.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking at my aerial, so I don't know if that's still the case or not.
But there were a couple along the road here that the landscape architect thought could be saved, so that's why we left that cluster in the front.
And the utilities are on the firehouse side?
On this side.
The overhead utilities?
The sewer is actually on the side of the road, yeah.
How about the overhead utilities?
The overhead utilities, I believe, are also on the side of the road.
On your side of the road?
On the side of the
On
road.
this side of the road, okay.
Yeah, there's the poles over there.
Any other questions? Mr. Purdy, are you done right for now, or?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that, I think at some point you may have questions for
Right.
Mr. Magnata, who runs his business.
Yes.
So I guess I will let him.
Great. Should we, perhaps we can summarize, do you want to have Mr. Magnata speak now, or do you want to wait for, do you have additional presentation you'd like to make at this time?
Are the staff comments going to be read into the record?
At this point, we're going to turn it over to staff to do some staff comments. I expect you may want to have some comments on those, but I want to have them summarized for the commission, so we may have some questions as a result of that.
Thank you. So we have nothing more to present at this time, but
Right.
we'll respond to any questions that the commission or the public may have.
Thank you. Evan, you did the staff report?
Correct. I wrote a preliminary staff report after we received some additional information late last week. Lighting plan and a landscaping plan was distributed to us. This application is for special exception for the establishment of the car wash use as well as activity within 100 feet of a wetland. A 2,500 square foot building, like Mr. Peretti summarized for us, and they did receive approval from the Inland Wetland Commission on August 12th. They meet all the standards of the BL district and the Access Management District. They also meet the landscaping requirements. However, we would like them to confirm if any of the trees within the site triangles may obstruct the vision of motorists. Concerning the parking requirements, this use is not listed in our use table, therefore, or in our parking standard table. Therefore, the commission would have to determine how many spaces are required. Staff has reviewed the comparable standards from our Planning Advisory Service Report number 510 and 511 from the American Planning Association. Review of this report found that the proposed 11 stacking spaces and 12 parking spaces / vacuum stalls were inconsistent with a lot of those requirements. We also, I distributed to you guys a state requirement that reads that the distance from the entrance of a car wash building to the public highway right-of-way shall be sufficient in length to accommodate the maximum number of vehicles that can be serviced within a 15-minute period. And while Mr. Porto had described 9 cars per hour just now, I think we would still need to know the maximum number of vehicles that can be serviced within a 15-minute period, so we can see if that is an applicable standard for this case. Of course, that's your determination to make. They meet the lighting standards, and based upon the application materials, it seems that they do meet the special exception criteria, with the exceptions of items 7, 8, and 9, which all deal with traffic and circulation. And if you'd like me to break those down, I can, but they are in the staff report that I handed out to all of you. And at this point, we have 2 conditions that we would recommend. 1, ensuring that the lighting is in compliance with our standards, and 1, asking that the trees be positioned and maintained in those site triangles so as to not block the vision of motorists.
Evan, just a question. Is the staff report you're referring to, is that revised from the one that was mailed to us?
It was. I made a few changes to, I added the specific special exception criteria, just because there was 3 items that I was not convinced that they were satisfying. I think it's really up to you guys to make that determination, but I thought you should read that language for yourselves and make that decision.
Okay.
I also handed out a collection of some of those parking standards from around the country, and you guys can take a look at those as well.
Okay. All right.
We also did bring this matter to the attention of the fire chief at our early plan meeting, and he just wanted us to bring to your attention that he had some concerns about traffic backing up in front of the firehouse.
Okay. So the primary issues you've raised are queuing issue, which
Correct.
is, do they have sufficient queuing, and parking? And because we don't have a parking standard for this use in the regulation, is there sufficient parking? And the queuing standard, when our regulations don't have a standard, then we determine it based on just other, planning documents, or what's the recommendation for that?
Typically, we try to provide you with any known standards from national bodies, such as the American Planning Association, even the Institute of Traffic Engineers. We don't have access to that information in terms of the Institute of Traffic Engineers. So Evan did try to contact South Central Connecticut Council of Governments, but wasn't able to make contact with the transportation folks there. So we were frankly looking for some more information because some of the standards in the planning literature weren't really some of them are a little dated. And we've been relatively unsuccessful in finding anything outside of the state regulation that Evan cited for the requirement for the queuing, which seems to be a regulation of the Department of Transportation. So I don't know if there's any other information out there the applicant could provide from possibly a traffic engineer. We could leave that up to them. But right now it seems like it's really kind of an open question. As these things typically run, the question is it going to be popular? What's the price point going to be? I mean, people kind of search around for the deals, and the car washes that are busy are the ones that are cheapest and fastest, I would imagine. At least that's what I look for myself. But so it's hard to know, but we have to go by something. And the best information we had is what he's presented.
Okay. Questions from anyone before we?
I have a question, but I'm not sure.
Do you have questions for staff before we start? Or
Something.
I have another question for Jim.
okay.
We just have the landscape plan in front of us, so I'm just deducing, but it looks like you're doing leak-offs from the parking lot and then into small stone beds. Is that piped under is it a combination that's piped?
Yeah,
And
so-
does it ultimately have an overflow?
So, yes, there's a combination of things going on there. We do have some paved leak-offs into a couple of different open areas that gets piped ultimately to the water quality basin. For a number of reasons. One, because the site's very flat, it's hard to get full depth structures in there. The other reason is, there's a big push on the municipalities for this disconnected impervious surface areas, so we tried to design it with that in mind, and this has been reviewed by the town engineer and he's approved it, so that's kind of, and again, it went through some iterations with Wetlands, so that's kind of how we got to where we are now. But it is designed so that it will store a certain amount of water, some will be able to infiltrate. The stuff that, what doesn't get passed at the slower rate will have time to settle in. So there is some groundwater recharge going on and some, detention going on, just kind of a mix of both, really.
And where does the water from the car wash go?
Oh, everything inside the building goes to the sewer, the
Okay.
the sanitary sewer, after being treated.
Okay.
I guess, if I would like to just say something about the queuing business. I did call, after we spoke yesterday, I did call a traffic engineer who's actually been here many times. He said basically the same thing, that there isn't a lot of good, concise information specific to car washes. He did send me a document by a transportation company, countingcars.com, that had done a study a number of years ago. They had studied 6 of them, and out of the 6, the peak queuing was only ever 10, and these were much bigger facilities. But I think more importantly, I think you probably need to hear from the owner about how this thing runs. It's not, again, it's not your typical type of car wash, and I mean, they could set the machinery to do 2 cars in a minute. So there's not a lot of wait time here. It's not like what we're all used to.
Would you be able to compare the speed through the car wash of this as compared to, say, the one up the street that perpetually has a line that's waited for, that's, you know, hand dried and all that?
Yeah, so there's no hand drying here.
Yeah, I just don't know what the time differential is. It might not be. Is that Nick coming up?
Yeah, so I mean, theoretically, you know, it takes you about 30 seconds or so to pay and 30 seconds to get through this thing. So at the shortest, it's a minute, you know, I
think more like a minute.
right. So at 60 cars an hour, that's, you know, 1 every minute.
So it's easy to come in and get through, but how easy is it going to be in terms of queuing to get back out on the road if they're trying to make a left-hand turn?
Depends on the time of day, to be honest. Only because I've been on the site a number of times, and but there's always an opportunity to get out. There's always a gap, and you know, sometimes you pull right out, and sometimes you have to wait a few seconds. But
and the dryers are on what side of the? They're all opposite the angled parking.
those are the vacuums. So
Vacuum.
that once you've gone through, if you want to use the vacuum, you can.
Okay, so you're going to have the owner describe the
I
operation?
think it's important in this case.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that.
Do you have anything you want to add first?
Do you want a response to your question of relative times?
That would just help give me some, you know,
Right,
how to consider it.
right. I would say for the record, we're big supporters of all car washes, though, so we're not suggesting
Right.
one's better than another.
No, I'm
This is just a little
strictly
different.
time.
Yes.
Hello, my name's Nick. Hello, my name's Nicholas Magnata. Introduce myself. I'm in my 40s, a couple of young kids, and been doing this not just my adulthood, my entire life. I was raised in the car wash business. My father was in the car wash business. Outside of trying a couple years in college, I've been in the car wash business. I presently got lucky enough with somebody trusting me to start my first one in the Hampden area. And we've done pretty good. I got a great crew working with me, so we've been able to build off of that. Yes, Joe's right. This concept is completely different. To answer your question, I told Joe earlier today I could print out some stuff, kind of make it kind of understandable.
I think we should also know is the relative time differences.
Okay, the relative time difference.
You got to speak.
Yes, ma'am, sir. Like you asked about a car wash up the street, I grew up washing cars in the full service industry. The full service industry, if the customer wanted me to scrub a wheel with a toothbrush, I did it. I vacuumed every car, did the windows in line for the customer. Then we pulled it into the tunnel, we prepped it right there, and the car was off. On the exit end, we usually towel dried the car and did prep work right there to make sure the customer was happy. The concept that I'm presenting today is a concept that was originally started down in Florida and in the South. Really great pioneer in the industry named Benny's was one of the guys who really started this. And it's called an express concept. As good as we are at doing the inside and detailing and stuff, we don't do it anymore. Customers seem that everybody's in the matter of getting places quick. So we try to accommodate to that feature. So when the customer pulls into our place, they're met with something that almost looks like an ATM. It's actually timed with different screens that don't last more than 17 seconds because we want the customer's eye focus and perception and attention is to move on. Typically, the first time somebody's there, yes, they get a little confused. We usually have somebody there for the first couple months to help somebody along. But the minute they go through that, they go right up to a booth. We don't even, I don't want to sound like our quality's bad, but we don't have to prep the car anymore. We spend a lot of money on such wonderful equipment that has the best technology now, that it hugs the car, it scrubs the wheels, it does all the car without us having to touch a thing. My attendant anymore, where I grew up, like I said, scrubbing somebody's wheels with a toothbrush, lucky guys nowadays just push a button and that's it. And actually, if we get lucky enough to build this Branford location, that won't even be in fact. His main job will just to be there just to make sure somebody gets on the track safely. The only other person that will be there is a manager on site to make sure, well, everything's functioning properly. It's a very simple concept. We don't do detailing, we don't do anything for the inside of customers' cars. If they would like that, we have vacuums out there for them to use. And we really run off of a membership program, a membership concept. Over 60% of our business is membership base. So once somebody becomes a member, no more do they use that unit anymore. They pull in and a gate just opens and they pull right forward. There's no interaction with the customer or our attendant anymore. It kind of stinks anymore because I love a lot of my customers by first name base, but during the pandemic that just took place, our Hampd location, we take care of the Hampd Police Department, so we were open the whole time. We also gas, so we were going the whole time, but one of the things our customers loved is there was really no interaction if the customer did not want it. They didn't have to roll down the window. So the concept is about moving along. I actually will try to get the car in and out in less than 3 minutes the minute the car enters my property. Hopefully that helps.
Well, I think what I found interesting was, what I'm now concerned is the amount of time to get the mat shaken in the conventional approach. And is that what's slowing the line and creating more of the queue than, I don't know if it moves through the line faster, but, than moving through it. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Just a few questions. Where is your Hampd location?
Skiff Street in Hampd, next door to Particle Chevrolet.
And is that a similar facility? Is it same size, same speed?
No, much smaller.
What's the queuing for that one, do you know?
Not off the top of my head, about the same. But yeah, this concept, it's not, Hampd, we're not as technical as this place will be, just yet.
Are there different options for types of washes, like, treating the undercarriage?
We actually only have 3 options. Okay. We keep it very simple, but yes, that is one of the options, man. Tire shine too.
What's the parking in Hampd? How many spaces, do you know?
Right now, presently, the total is, the back is 12.
Is the vacuuming a separate fee, or is it the same price, or do you pay extra for it?
It's actually free for members or anybody using the car wash. And as you can see on the plot, it has a separate exit and entrance, so this way customers exiting the facility, if they don't want to use that, they could exit right out. Jim allowed for a left or right exit, or they can use the vacuum facility.
Well, there's no way to enter without going through the main building.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
The drying process, how's that work so quickly?
Like I said, I grew up in this industry. I used to service and maintain at nighttime car washes, and that grew into another business to where we actually nowadays help install. And we'd be using a system built from International Drying System, and it's called a Stealth. It's probably quieter than a weed whacker, but it's about 120 horsepower. After that, before the exit of the tunnel, the last 10 feet of the tunnel, 9.5 to be exact, will be a Motor City buff and dry top brush. And that actually uses a chamois material, and it has a 15 horsepower blower that's attached to actually dry the outside of the car. So where one day, years ago, we used to have people towel drying, like I said, it's all machinery and technology now. So it's whisper quiet. Even the vacuums outside aren't your typical vacuums that we're used to. So it's not your old coin op. The vacuum producer is actually inside the building. If you're at my vacuums in Hampden, we could have a conversation quieter than this right now while you're vacuuming your car. Where I grew up, the vacuums, you kind of had to scream over them.
So the vacuum, is it like on top,
Yes, sir.
sides? How about underneath, anything?
We
Like-
do an overhead arch. This way nobody ever trips on the hose. It keeps the hose off the ground.
So it's basically drying the top and the sides of the car?
Oh,
No
drying the
drying
car.
under, no drying from under?
No, we don't dry the bottom of the car. No, sir.
Right.
No, sir. We do clean it, but no, there's no efficient way of doing that.
Okay.
I'm reading the state of Connecticut standard here for
Yes, sir.
queuing, and it says the distance from the entrance of the car wash building to the public highway right-of-way shall be sufficient in length to accommodate the maximum number of vehicles that can be serviced within a 15-minute period. And then it has parentheses, 30 spaces. Is that? What is, I guess my question is, what is the maximum number of vehicles that can be served within a 15-minute period?
Well, so we.
Yeah, we put down,
We would anticipate
Format.
about, well, I told you based on the car counts, but we would anticipate it would take about a minute and a half to get a car from beginning to end.
Okay.
And I think that would put us at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
7.5.
Yeah, around, well, I'm sorry, I would have to, I got to figure out the math.
But it would be 7.5, because you
Yeah.
got 15-minute
Yes,
window,
right.
and it's 1.5 minutes.
All right, so it's not 1 minute, it's 1.5 minutes.
Yes, but from the very beginning
10 and a half.
to the very end,
Okay.
yes. Not of the queue, of the wash.
Wouldn't it be half of 15?
2 minutes is 7.5, so it'd be 10.
Oh, okay.
It's 10 and a half, okay. Okay, so you need, under the state standard, if it's, well, let me ask this, this minute and a half, is that something you adjust? I mean, can you turn up the knob and it goes faster? I mean, so what's the, I don't know, well, how did you come up with a minute and a half? I mean, I don't, is there a standard? I don't know what equipment you use to do this.
when we actually start off our Hampden location every single day,
Right.
and typically nowadays the car washes that I help build, it's all about efficiency. Labor is a very tough commodity nowadays. So yes, just like any business, you want to be able to move faster. And we try to do it with better people and just less of them. To do that, we need technology, and by doing that, we have a computer system, touch of a button, and everything speeds up very fast.
Sure.
I'd like
Yeah.
to ask a question. I'm
Turn your
more
mic.
confused.
Yes, sir?
I'd like to ask a question. Attorney Porto said that it takes about a minute and a half to get through the tunnel.
Yes, sir?
So maybe you said
Actually-
it takes 3 minutes to go through the tunnel. I don't know, I'm asking.
No, actually, the concept that we're doing is the minute you enter the property, not vacuuming, the minute you enter my property to the time you go through my blowers should be no more than 3 minutes. The minute and a half is timed basically.
So let me ask you this, if a car, single car, not a whole line of cars, not cubicle cars, if a single car went from the start of the process and went through the tunnel, I guess that you call the building the tunnel, what length of time does it take a single car to go from the beginning to the end? Not the vacuuming part, but just the getting through the tunnel with all the water and all the air and drying.
Where it's, we designed for a 120-foot tunnel.
So how long does it take for that car to get through
That
that?
car, just from the time it enters the tunnel to the exit of the tunnel,
Yes.
just in that 125 feet should be less than 1 minute.
So in 1 minute, you can wash clean and dry a car,
Yes,
that
sir.
you're saying.
And I'll make it look phenomenal.
So that means that in the course of in an hour, you're gonna do 60 cars.
Yes, sir. I could actually, like I said,
But if you did
with
60
the-
cars, you won't have enough space for queuing all these cars up.
Well, they won't be queuing, they'll be trying to leave the site more than trying to.
Well, whatever, whether
Coming to
it's
this
coming or
site.
entering,
Yeah.
it seems to me, I'm just trying to get in my mind what the capacity of the car wash is, so that we know how many are coming on the property and how many leaving. And if the maximum capacity of that car wash is a minute a car,
Right.
that means there's gonna be 60 cars.
Well, you gotta add in the time to do the,
Well, that's even
Okay.
more, yeah, but I'm saying it's even more time.
so I think that's 3 minutes, that's where the 3 minutes
That'd
came
be
in,
the
right?
busiest day ever, though.
But the 3 minutes is you have a couple minutes to pay, you get another minute to go through, and, right, is that what the 3 minutes was?
It's like basically when Domino says 30 minutes or less, our tops is 3 minutes.
Okay.
We're doing it
20
less than
cars
that.
roughly in an hour.
And that would be,
If they're not
to
maxed.
max that out, would be the busiest day ever. If you did the math, I mean, that's over probably 1,000 cars.
And-
You couldn't hit that standard.
but-
Yeah,
but
that'd be really good.
Attorney Porter, you said a minute and a half, and I think your client just said a minute. So if you go down to a minute, then you need a stacking of 15 as opposed to 10 and a half.
Correct.
And your plan only shows 11.
Plus you got one inside the tunnel. So we're really 12 because
Yeah, I mean, that's,
It seems to me the issue is not the stacking coming in, but the stacking going out, because it's, you know, you're making a right freehand turn to go in, and, you know, you're maybe waiting for traffic to clear to make a left-hand turn, but that queuing line, the process itself seems to move through quickly. I'm more concerned about the time it takes to come out, which, you know, the exit line is much slower, and if they're making a left-hand turn, that can be very difficult on that section, you know, the way the exits are on 95.
yeah, I don't know what the stacking capacity is for exit. I don't know.
So I also think that look, you know, this area here, we have a lot of, you know, car businesses here. I think it's a great location. I think the potential of being busy is, I think you're gonna probably hit that mark. I mean, that's what I would want if I was doing this business. I think this street here is a good street to put it on because you're surrounded by so many. I think you're gonna be pretty much to maximum with the amount of vehicles that go through here. I think it'll be very busy. I would anticipate that on it not being. I think you might get one of the busiest days ever. You know, so I think that got to be taken into consideration. You know, and say, hey, if we could do this many cars and we have enough cars to come here, and you're going to want the busiest day ever, I think you might get it in a location like this area. Yeah. So that's definitely going to probably take it into consideration.
So maybe it would be better if we had the opportunity to consult with the traffic engineer. It seems like some of these questions obviously have to do with queuing. We can control the speed of the wash, so we can manage how fast the cars go through the wash, to manage how fast the cars leave, and to create an appropriate amount of spacing so that they're not packing up at the beginning or the end while they're trying to execute left-hand turns. As the commission is well aware, left-hand turns are complicated everywhere. They're complicated out of Dunkin' Donuts, they're complicated out of Starbucks, they're complicated out of all sorts of convenience operations, particularly onto roads like North Main Street. However, it is a valid point, it is a proof point that we have to hit, and if the commission would like more information on that, we can come back to you after consulting with the traffic engineer, see if we can get some more clarity on this, so that, I'm not suggesting anybody's guessing, but we could offer more of an expert opinion on the issue.
Sure. I was thinking we'd probably end up continuing this anyway, so absolutely more information would be helpful. The other thing, I think it would also, two other things from my end. I don't know if you can contact the state. I didn't know there was a state regulation on this thing, but or whoever is in response, and see how they interpret their regulation. And do they allow it? I don't know how you base the, you know, if you can turn it up or down or whatever, or do they use whatever the manufacturer says? The manufacturer says it's X speed, and maybe they use the maximum capacity, and that's what they use rather than counting on you. I don't know. So I would be interested in seeing what the state of Connecticut says if you comply with this standard. I don't know if you can do that or if they'll do that without you filing an application, but apparently you need some sort of approval with them. And it's typical, I know as Mr. Preddy talks to state people all the time for DEP stuff. So I think that would be helpful as well.
Interestingly enough, if you look at that line from the state, however many cars you can wash in a 15-minute period is what they want you to queue. So you actually get penalized for washing cars faster, if you think about the math there. It doesn't make any sense. So I want to talk to the traffic engineer to have him explain that one to me, truthfully.
Talk to whomever, but if you need some approval by them, talk to them too. Maybe we're misunderstanding it. So, and the other thing I'd be interested in is that you mentioned that is the parking. That's the other thing that is there sufficient parking for employees and whatever. The fact that you have vacuums and it's free. That's why I was wondering that, because that means I think if I'm using this, hey, it's free. I've already paid for it. I'm inclined to do it. So you may get a lot of people who want to get in those spaces to vacuum because they've already paid for it. And is it enough? I don't know. Particularly if you go fast, because it may take more than you take a minute to go through, but it may take 5 minutes to get the vacuum and so forth. So those are the issues that I'm thinking of.
That was actually my question, was what percentage of the people that get the car washed actually stay to vacuum? Is it 50-50? Is it 90-10?
No, you can't really put a percentage on it. And when they do get packed, people just drive by, they come back later because, they're able to use them.
But I'm just trying to get a sense that does everybody who goes through the tunnel, do they tend to stay and vacuum? And
No.
How long does an average car take to vacuum? And I guess that can vary depending on how finicky you are. But.
Yeah, but no, there's usually significant spots. I mean, there's always, it seems, a spot open or two in Hampden. We have the same system. Yeah.
So would you say the number of spots tends to relate to the length of the queue? Because you have about 12 and it's sort of, okay.
So I really like car washes. I think we have a couple quality car washes here in Branford.
Yes, sir.
And
I worked at a couple growing up.
Yeah, and and it's nice to have in the town. And I think one thing I'm thinking about is when I pull out of the car washes, because I don't wash my own cars. I go to those guys. The street is pretty wet. And I think that's basically the one little concern I pretty much, bothers me in this area is, the congestion in the wet street. Do you think the dripping from the cars will arrive to the street, or will this be able to is it happening in Hampden?
Well,
I'd love to go through that car wash, by the way. I'm going to go.
You like it. We'll get you over there. But no, it's usually not too bad. Not at all. If the car comes out dry enough going through the tunnel, it's not going to be that wet going on the street.
The other car washes there is, and I know right here is the firehouse.
How wet's your car coming out of the tunnel? When you leave, is your car still sopping wet? That's why we use a buff and dry machine. One of our concepts, and my father always told me, is as long as the windows are dry, the customer feels the perspective that the car is totally dry. So one of the things is making sure we try to get it as dry as possible, so when you leave, last thing I want somebody to do is calling me from the middle of the parking lot going, I can't get out of my car, my doors are frozen in the middle of winter.
Doesn't it drip from the bottom and you don't dry the bottom?
Well, we don't dry the bottom, and it is going to be dripping from the bottom. Like I said, there's only, but the outside, the exterior of the car is we're able to get it pretty good.
Any other questions? We need to open up to the public. Any other questions from commission members? We are likely going to continue this, but let's hear from public comment. Anyone, members of the public wish to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Tracy Boyle, 52 Lamphere Cove. I use the Hampd car wash and I love it. I really do. It's a great car wash. And the only thing is, when I heard the presentation and they said there were 11 for the queue line, right away I said to myself, that doesn't seem like enough. I have been to that car wash where I had to, it just went over, they just started using the automated, where you put your credit card in. And I've been there a couple of times, and that's where you get a jam up. People, it's either not working that day, something's wrong, and it just starts to back up there. Now in Hampden, they have 2 lanes at the credit card where you sign up for the car wash. And if you're a member, you can pass through on the right-hand side. I don't know if they have that here. So that does help the line in the Hampden store, in the Hampden location. And the Hampden location has plenty of area for traffic, for the line, to keep them off the road. But when I heard 11, I was like, that is not nearly enough. And I love this car wash. I would love to see one here, because I would go. But they need to find something else, something to do, because those cars are going to be backing up on Route 1. That's all.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ann Ostendarp. I'm at 57 North Main Street, so I walked over this evening. And I thank you for the chance to talk with all of you. I didn't realize that Branford had an outbreak of dirty cars as bad as it is. What I knew about was that Branford did have 6 car washes in town, population of 28,000 or so. And if anybody's willing to go 3 or 7 miles out of their way outside of Branford over to East Haven, they've got their pick of 4 more car washes. But if we've got a dirty car outbreak, we really should address it. A little more to the point here, though, is the concerns for the inland wetlands. My concern is in hearing not only we have some wetlands here, I should point there, with a pond up above and Girl Brook going under Route 1, passing through and then underground again. That means we've got a lot of underground water. And when Branford is part of the numerous towns along the East Coast who are making hurricane and tropical alert announcements, whether, let's see, Ida, was it Henri, Elsa so far this year, with alerts for 1.2 inches an hour, 3 to 4 inches an hour, and even in isolated amounts, up to 10 inches an hour. All that water needs to go someplace. If we're talking about paving an area adjacent to inland wetlands, we do want to know where that water goes, because the ground can't absorb that much that fast. So where will it go? Inland wetlands. Let's see. Protect wetland from unnecessary uses, disturbances, or destruction in the public interest. So here, from what I hear of the car wash description, that sounds like a terrific business model and the direction of the future, the present. But with the wetlands right here, across from the fire station, on Route 1, which serves as a gully between that ridge line up behind us and the ridge line up via Cherry Hill, where the water comes down to Route 1, this may not be the best location for a needed car wash. I don't think we are well served by grading this location for Branford to have an additional car wash. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Ron Manning.
I want to apologize to the board here a little bit because I was hoping I didn't have to do this. I'm the owner of Branford Car Wash up the hill, and I realize how bad this looks. It's a very self-serving moment for me. At any rate, there's a couple things that have to be clarified here. And I would just hope you would take my word for this, at least think about what I'm about to tell you. Loading capacity and cars per man hour have driven our business forever. I started in this business when Nicky was riding a tricycle. So, and I've known him for that long, by the way. So, when we're talking about this loading capacity, which 11 cars is really not a lot, and I also think in question here is whether we're going to do 90 a day, right? I mean, let's think about this. January comes, we have our first snowfall. 3 days it dries out enough that we can now get to the banquet table for every car wash on the East Coast. We're all waiting for that. He's going to control that at 90 cars on that day. What happens if it's out of his control and 22 cars show up in the queue? Now, I understand he's telling you the car's going to go through 120 foot in a minute. I get that. I get it. That would like being launched off the aircraft carrier Nimitz in an F-14 for the customer in the car. But I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what a day looks like, what his day is going to look like, okay? Opens up the business at 8 o'clock, retired guy there, waiting to go in, got his newspaper, got his coffee, ready to go. Pull the door up. He can't find his credit card, and he's trying to run this pay station to get through the car wash. Takes him a couple minutes, Nicky's attendant's right on it, over to the guy. While that's going on, the second car, the young lady gets out of the car and decides she wants to put paper in her trunk. 3 more cars pull in. You're not at 11 no more because that car hasn't cleared and gotten into the queue or loading capacity, whatever you want to call it. Now these cars go through. 4 more cars pull in. So now the property becomes tight. One of the free vacuumers sucks a sock up out of her car. She goes over to the one guy that's working, which there's not going to be one there when wintertime comes, I assure you. But goes over to that one guy, says, hey, your vacuum stuff doesn't work. That guy's going to leave his post. Go take care of that young lady. 3 more cars pull in. Now they're starting to catch up at this point. So they got cars going through the tunnel, all right, at this 1 minute, which I would have never said that, guys. I would have told the truth. I would have been like 4 or 5 minutes but if you got 1 going out, you can't get him to exit the property. Now, at the time he gets his cars all ready to leave at wherever this area is where we're going to leave, whether it's right next to the firehouse, whether it's down, whether it's north, whether it's south, doesn't make any difference. There's an impact of those cars hitting the post road, okay? So right at the moment that the site gets organized and these cars are ready to hit the post road, the fire truck light freezes traffic. Okay, now what happens? So you have an attendant shut the car wash off until that occurs. He's got 4 more cars coming in. Anybody that's been around a car wash knows that it never comes in. If you say I'm going to do 90 cars in a day, which I don't believe, but if you say that's the story, okay, they're not going to come in 9 cars an hour. You're going to have the lunchtime. Our day consists of extreme peaks and valleys, and you have to have staff to manage those exceptions. So if you have nobody on the property, who takes control of imminent chaos? Because every car wash in the winter is 1 car away from losing control. Who does that? If you have a labor-sensitive business, you don't have the staff. I employ 40 people. 23 on a shift when we get into the winter. Totally different business. So I'm not pitting one against the other. I was born and raised on the exterior models. These cars now have gotten out on the road. The light freezes. Everybody stops. Now, is somebody in this room going to believe that that car's not dripping? I wash my car almost every day. Not because I'm in the car wash industry. I'm OCD. Cars are my favorite thing. That's how I stayed 35 years in the industry. Do you know how long it takes me to dry my car and make it stop dripping? God forbid you buy a Ram truck, it drips for 2 hours. I've timed it. So now you're going to tell me these cars, these 5 cars get out on the road in a locked traffic scenario because the person that was coming down the Post Road was a nice person. He let all 3 get out. He recognized all 3 are out. So now 3 cars got in line. Not one of them is dripping on the Post Road. That's one hell of a system. It's not true. There's only 2 issues. Whether this footprint will handle the potentials. And again, I'm going to tell you, the car wash industry is feast or famine. Certainly he doesn't have to worry about higher traffic count on a day that it rains. Neither do I. But to say we're going to do 90 cars when we're about ready, before we know it, crossover from Christmas to January to February to March, where Ned Lamont has unbelievable molasses all over the roads, white, and they're going to do 90 cars and spend the money for that project, I don't think it mathematically works. The last point I'll make, because there's 2 issues. The infrastructure of his moving traffic, and the other issue becomes, no matter how you want to put it, the other issue becomes this building. These are our first responders. Now, I'm not saying where you put the egress doesn't soften the traffic going out on the road. So let's say that it really is not that bad. We can move it somewhere on that property. These people are all going to be able to release a little farther away from the complications of that light freezing and first responders going to do what they do. Let's say we can do that. There's still an impact. There's going to be an impact on the Post Road. You can't discharge more traffic into an existing thing and not have some repercussion. There's going to be some exception, right? There's going to be some event that occurs. This is my point. If we were able to rationalize this in a percentage, and that percentage was, let's say 5% risk, 10% risk, who in this room would want to go talk to the chief and tell his family that there's a 10% risk that we could have a problem for our first responders? Folks, we're coming out of a month that we paid respect to first responders. We should be covering anything possible that they have no inconvenience in conducting their job. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Other members of the public wish to comment? Okay, I think we are going to continue this. Are there other further, does the applicant want to respond to anything at this time?
Thank you. No, we've taken notes. We understand what we need to respond to. We've taken enough of everybody's time this evening. We'll be ready. Are we back in 30 days, or do we come back at the first meeting of next month?
What do you prefer? How long do you need?
I think we need 30 days, Jim? Yeah, we'll take 30 days.
Okay, so we'll make it the second meeting in October, which is what?
16th?
Okay, I think it's the 7th is the first meeting, right? 7 and 14 or what? It's probably higher.
21st.
Okay, so we'll continue this to our October 21st meeting.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, that brings us then to, how are we doing on time? Are we okay? You want to break, anyone, or, all right, okay. Okay, we're going to our next matter, which is item number 5. This is 12 Sunrise Camp Road. This is Robert Caldarella, Pamela Everett, owner. That's the special exception coastal site plan, the demo and rebuild of the cottage at 12 Sunrise Cove Camp. This is a continuation of the public hearing that we opened at our last meeting. Mr. Preddy.
Yes,
and I
again,
think you were going to...
Jim Preddy, Criscola Engineering. If you recall, at the last meeting, I presented this, and it didn't seem like the questions were 99% satisfied from the commission, but there was some folks from the camp next door that had some couple questions, and Bob wasn't able to be here, so he's here tonight, so hopefully he could kind of answer those. I know he did meet with those folks last night, so hopefully he can address their concerns as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm Bob Caldarella, representing Sunrise Cove here this evening. I am also the builder for the property. And I apologize to the committee that I wasn't able to be here that night. I had an emergency in South Carolina. My father-in-law was in the hospital. We drove down there the night before. But I am here tonight to answer any of your questions. Sunrise Cove has done a bunch of these rebuilds over the last 25 some odd years. And we're pretty good at doing this, so whatever questions people at Branford have, or any other adjacent property owners, or you guys have, I'm here to answer tonight. So.
Okay, and I understand you did have a meeting with some Lanford.
We did. We finally were able to get together last night with the people from Lanford who expressed their concerns to us about this particular property. We have other adjacent properties to their property that we've built up to in the past. There was some questions of views, and there was some questions of where we were placing the house. The house is pretty much sitting in the same exact footprint as it is now. It's somewhat bigger, just a few hundred, about 100 square feet bigger than the existing ground floor square footage of the existing house. And so they were concerned about the positioning, so that the adjacent neighbor's view. We can address that by moving the house back a little bit. We have a little bit of room in our plot plan for Sunrise Cove to move the house back a couple of feet, which in my opinion doesn't really change their view. Their view is down a corridor, and I have some pictures if you want to see it. Their room's down some corridor that looks out to the ocean. But we could definitely accommodate some of their concerns, and we tried to address that last night. I think we were pretty successful in addressing it. They were also concerned about some of the height of the cottage, but again, the height of the cottage is not going to really affect their view. It's all within our requirements and town requirements. Those types of issues, I'm not sure we're going to be able to make any changes to. But overall, I think we kind of talked through our differences last night, and we can definitely accommodate some of their issues. So we'll be glad to hear some of those tonight.
Okay, thank you. Questions from commission members before we open up to the public?
Take the conversations outside.
Yes, excuse me, can you take your conversations outside? We're having active public hearings. Thank you. Mr. Preddy, just one question. I threw a little monkey wrench at you at the end on whether this was an expansion of a nonconformity. Did you look at that at all?
I did. I don't think it constitutes expansion because we're not increasing the number of units.
Correct.
But I know Mr. Caldarella has gone to ZBA a number of times, and the response has been the same, that they didn't need to be there.
Okay.
And I had a conversation with Evan before this because I wanted to address that before we got to this point so that we don't have to go to the ZBA and then come to planning and zoning. And at that time, he said he would look into it. We did not go to the ZBA. But we could do that if we think so, but we don't think it's necessary.
Are you telling me that in the past, here's the issue, the nonconformity, I understand you're lessening certain nonconformities. You're actually making it more conform, you're reducing a setback nonconformity.
Correct. In this case, we are. We're
right.
reducing a setback.
And the nonconformity, as I saw it, and it was just sort of a guesswork, is that there's the nonconformities, you have a one lot with 26 houses on it. And under the zone, one lot, you're supposed to have one house. So if you enlarge the footprint of one of the houses, is that an expansion of a nonconformity?
And I think this committee has shown over the last 25 years that that's not a part of the nonconformity. The physical expansion of these 100 square foot additions to these cottages haven't been in the past subject to that. We have 15 cottages that were rebuilt.
Right, and if the ZBA has said to you, because you've represented them, you don't need to get a variance for that.
Correct.
Is that what they've said?
Yes.
Okay.
They've questioned, yes.
Okay.
In the last 3 cottages that we've built, they've questioned why we're there.
Okay.
And that's why I kind of brought it up with Evan before we started this process and said, not that we need to skip the process, but it just seems to be the same thing over and over with ZBA, that we're already in nonconformity and we're not changing the nonconformity.
Right. Now, I understand you're not putting another house there. That would obviously be enlarging it.
Correct.
The question I had, and you are reducing one of the nonconformities, is that if you make one of the houses the footprint bigger, is that count as an expansion versus an intensification? It's a legal nuance, which I don't know the answer to.
And I think since 1997, when we started this project with planning and zoning, when they first gave us the special exemption, we've kind of determined that that's really not part of the non-conforming. Expanding the physical individual home.
So your understanding is both from the ZBA and the past precedent of how we've treated these similar situations of rebuilds of cottages that are larger but not but still within the zoning regulations.
Correct.
Those have not been considered to be expansions of non-conformity.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm asking you. That's
that's our determination. That's our
Okay.
determination so far. And then talking with Harry and Evan and the ZBA board as well, it's been the case. Yeah.
Okay, great. Other questions?
I just have a general question. When were your regulations adopted initially to allow for the?
About 1998, and they were changed about maybe 5 years later.
So how many houses have converted since 98?
15 out of the 35 homes have been converted.
Whereas they were all mostly cottages before that?
Correct. Yep, we have building standards that were approved years ago, 684 square feet on the first floor and 741 square feet on the second floor, and an attic loft area if there's a third floor. And because of the zones down there, there's very, very few basements or anything like that. We don't allow any under parking for cars or that kind of stuff. So,
Any other questions, staff or commission members? Why don't we open up the public? Members of the public wish to comment? Anyone? Sir, go ahead. You
My name is Scott Bloody. I own the neighboring cottage.
Yeah, you probably should grab a. Oh yeah, and the TV will want you to stand over here. So.
Yeah, if you use the you don't need both.
That's fine. Hi, good evening. My name is Scott Maudie, and I own the neighboring unit over in Lanfear's Cove. It's number 51. Mr. Caldarella made a comment that my view would not be affected, and I do have a picture. I'm happy to walk up and approach and show you all. But this is a view from off my back landing that shows a beautiful shot of Long Island Sound. This proposal includes moving this cottage. Not only is it going to go straight up, so envision just a dark line here that's going to completely eliminate that entire blue sky there. But it's also requesting to move that cottage 4 feet forward, which essentially would just eliminate that view. So the view may not be important to him as a builder, but it's very important to me as a owner of a cottage.
Where was that taken from on the plan?
It's off my cottage.
Right, so is it off the side, is it over here? Just trying to get the
If I
angle.
could just
So this is your, so is it over here?
It's from the
Or is
back.
It's back.
So is this mine?
This is yours here. And
Oh,
then
yeah,
this
so
is the
it's-
proposed building.
This is mine here. Yep, it's right from here.
So
There's a
it's
back
from-
landing.
Okay.
Yeah, looking that way. there's a book.
Okay.
There's a point of, we'll need that for the record, so if you take a screenshot and email it to me.
Sure.
I'll give you the email address after.
Yeah.
Just looking at the cottage is not going 4 feet forward. We discussed with them, the original plans show it right on about a foot from where the existing house. We're moving it back 4 feet, so away from back away from.
Great, thank you.
So I just wanted to go on the record with my opposition around any type of movement of that building forward, and in my view, obviously, it should go backwards if it applies. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Catherine Learned. My husband and I own cottages 50 and 53 at Lamfair Cove. 50 is immediately adjacent to 51, the Mowdy's cottage. I spoke here at our last meeting, and I deeply appreciate this opportunity to discuss and to consider this application. There are just 2 points I'd like to make this evening. One is regarding what feels like a certain amount of ambiguity, and the fact that we are not seeing any record is confusing to me at the very least, but it's also not reassuring. And that is this whole concern or understanding, belief, or anecdote that permissions have been granted or that this has already been adjudicated as being in compliance. I find that somewhat disconcerting. Yes, my husband and I were part of the meeting. 9 of us from Lamfair Cove Association did meet with Mr. Caldarella yesterday, and we were grateful for that meeting. It was certainly a meeting that makes sense to have neighbors meet together and talk about those things. At that meeting, we were told about a decision that was made by this board 15 years ago in which a site plan for all of Sunrise Cove was presented with the sites and the footprints of all the cottages were they to become permanent housing. This is my understanding. I did call the planning office today, and we talked about whether this information was in the records of your department. It's not readily located in the records of your department. I would ask that this corroboration be made in some way. I'm certainly willing to come in and do the research, but I think rather than all of us presuming that this has already been decided, it would be very worthwhile to understand that, in fact, this has been clarified. The second is that, again, as Mr. Caldarella said, we did have this meeting yesterday, and there were many things discussed. I would ask that this commission ask or stipulate that the things that were discussed and were agreed to are reflected in the plans, because what you are agreeing to is whatever you're seeing on the documents. So you cannot agree to, nor can you have for the record, anything that was discussed in a third-party conversation 3 miles away last evening. So, for instance, there continues to be some misunderstanding, perhaps, or certainly ambiguity about where this footprint will be. Will it be moved back? Will it be moved back 4 feet? Last night, we also talked about perhaps 6 feet, maybe as much as 10 feet. It would be good to have a site plan that shows that. It would be good for stipulations to be made on this application were it to be approved that stipulate what activity happens in that 10-foot setback, if that's at all possible. I know that there are many quality of landscape or site plans that factor into your decisions. So not an active patio, not have that be a repository for major mechanical equipment, things that would really affect the quality of our neighboring properties so much. Also things like not having lights shine on our property. The fenestration, we were assured that the windows on the facade facing Lamfair Cove Association were going to be decreased in number, but again, that plan has not been submitted as part of this application that shows any change in the fenestration. So we understand that progress will be made at Sunrise Cove. We'd like to do it in a neighborly way so that all of us continue to enjoy our properties and our adjacency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other members of the public wish to comment?
I just have one thing to add. Per their changes last night, their request last night,
Yep.
did drop by to Harry and Evan today, revised plans with the 4 feet on the site plan. So copies were made and designed today, and then this is the new This is the new setback.
Okay, so this is a revision from what was presented at the last meeting? Can you, maybe, Mr. Preddy, you can maybe explain the changes?
Sure. So the plan, well, let me take this off. The 4 feet, front, back, whatever, it's 4 feet away from the water. So, I don't know what you want to call front or back, but.
None of the setbacks or anything were changed.
So that 10-foot setback line, which is on the drawing, we basically slid the house 4 feet back along that. So the two setbacks, the 13.8 and 10.3 are the same, but this number from the edge of the water went from 70.9 to 74.1. So it slid back that way. The other thing we added on here was the location of the central air unit, just to show that it was not going to be in that 10-foot area. But that's the only thing that's changed.
So, okay, so you push the thing back how many feet?
4 feet.
4 feet?
Away from the water, 4 feet.
Away from the water.
And we added the location of the AC unit.
Okay.
That was very quickly this morning after I heard about their meeting last night.
Okay.
I drew a line from the point where he said he took that photo. I drew a line from the point where he said he took that photo to cottage number 15. And there's I don't know if you want to look at it, but there's a small triangle that you can see the level of obstruction that would be left. And if there's any way to move it to reduce that without. Well, he said that the photo was taken from the back corner of his house.
Yeah, that's the picture from the back corner of his house.
Right. So I drew a line from here to the next obstructing line versus to the corner. So that's the angle of difference. And I just don't know if there's room to move it back this way to take that out or not.
Yeah. There's a fence here currently. You can see the fence. So the fence is dividing the property line right now.
Right.
And then.
And that roof is the existing cottage.
That's the existing cottage.
Right. So he's concerned that if you have it, it's going to be, he's not.
It's going to come. So that house now is going to come back about 3 feet from where it is now, and
right.
go up. So it's going to come back away.
But you could see
away from this.
But you can see the angle.
Like yeah, I know. I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't know if that's feasible or not, but that might
There's
help.
a row of trees here, and there's a parking lot here, and there's a parking lot here. So 4 feet was really the only room because we have a 4x4 patio coming out. Walkway to get into.
From here to here.
Yeah.
Is owned by what?
It's owned by us, but this is a parking lot right here.
Right. That's the edge. This is grass, is it not?
Well, there's a bunch of trees right here. That's the existing rear of the house, a small shed.
Right.
And so that's coming back 4 feet.
Yes, you've got it lined up here, and then have room for the.
Right. There's a better shot. Yeah, that kind of shows it right there. The parking lot is right adjacent to the house, and behind too.
Right.
Just one question. I think one of the questions that the prior speaker asked about was what happens within the 10-foot setback. I'm assuming you're not proposing anything, you're not proposing any structures because you'd have to show them on the thing.
No
so
changes to well, there's an existing walkway there for the existing house. That'll all be grass. And the fence that's currently there will be put right up against where it was on the property line.
Okay. And there was one reference to a meeting in 1997, something before, and I think a couple of us were here. Joe, you and I were. I actually remember you coming forward, but I don't remember we actually approved any. I remember I don't know if we actually did anything though.
Yeah, I have a copy of the approval.
What is it we approved?
A special district.
Okay. So is that a different zoning? So we're not going by the R2? Does that make all my questions moot? Because do we have a special? Is this a PDD? It's not a PDD.
So.
They used to approve areas
June 5th, 1997, PDD was approved.
This is a PDD? Okay.
Really?
Do we know that?
It was a 5-year period.
Right.
And then after the 5-year period, we had to come back to planning and zoning on every one that wasn't completed after the 5-year period. That was our understanding at the time.
Okay.
If you could provide a copy, that would be wonderful. I know we talked about this before, but now that you have the document.
Yeah, and I have the original plan too with the existing cottages and the expanded cottages on the 2 cottages.
I actually remember you coming. I just don't remember what the outcome was.
Yeah.
I do remember the presentation, and I remember the logic of it.
Yeah.
But I don't.
So we've been, the first 5 years was anyone in that footprint who wanted to build in that time frame can build to certain specifications. And then after the 5-year period was over, we had to come back to planning and zoning for each individual one.
Shouldn't that be on file somewhere with the town if that's
It is. It's in the. This is a copy of the town record.
It should, but we should locate it. But you're right. Because be helpful to.
So, volume 628, page 14.
628, 14?
Because the sequence sounds weird too. That for the 5 years, that it's only for 5 years. That seems odd.
Very odd.
I know that sometimes things expire if they're not built out within 5 years, in which case it reverts back to what it was before. But I don't know that.
So Chuck, I wasn't involved then, but it kind of makes sense, right? You get a 5-year zoning permit, so do what you got to do in those 5 years, but then everything after that had to come back. So
right. So then the PDD expired, or so what is the PDD is like its own separate zone.
It doesn't expire.
My guess is that at past the 5-year point, every time you changed any of the structures, you're changing the PDD, so you had to come back, I guess. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of. I mean, our PDD regs were different back then too.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, that was the sequence of events over the last 20-something years, 25
Right.
years. So.
Because we've been viewing this as not a PDD, but just as a non-conforming R2 lot, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I can't find any record whether that expired, other than that it says it's good for 5 years with a 1-year extension. So that's all the document in the record said.
Yeah, I mean, it may be beneficial to continue the public hearing so we have a chance to look at the document and see what the zoning status actually is of the property to make sure it's either one or the other. We would need a time extension. We'd be 1 day outside of the 35 days to continue to the 7th of October. So if you're willing to grant that, that would be up to you to grant, to allow us to do that.
Okay.
That's what you want to do.
Does that make sense? It'd be nice to know what.
Yeah, we'd like to get to the bottom of it too to avoid any further.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. What do you got?
Sorry, may I ask one further question? That is that if in fact this document said that subsequent, after that 5-year period, each cottage would have to come, or each renovation or rebuild would have to come in front of the zoning, then why is this application only for the disturbance of the ground in a coastal resource? Why isn't this, in fact, an application for this cottage?
It is. It's an application for planning and zoning as well as the coastal.
Well.
Not according to what I've been told by staff.
Okay.
Well, I think there's a coastal site plan component.
Yes, there is.
So that has to come before us. But not every time you do some building, you don't have to come before zoning. Sometimes you can get permits to build a house. You can put a single-family house. You don't even have to come before this commission.
But the applicant just said that he was telling you that he has a document that says every building in this complex needs to come before you.
No, that's not what I said at all. I said
I don't know what
since the expiration of the 5-year period, we have been coming back at the request of planning and zoning to come back to the planning and zoning for each individual cottage after the special exemption period expired.
Right. So in any event, we'll try to get to the bottom line of what this is. So,
okay.
So appreciate it. We'll continue then this public hearing for our October 7th meeting.
Yeah, for the record, you're offering a time extension to allow us to do that?
Yes.
Mr. Caldarella? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Everyone's still good to go?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us then to old business. I think that completes our public hearings for this matter, for this evening. We have our minutes from our September 2nd meeting, which I think were mailed to us. And we had a chance to review those. Does someone want to make a motion? I think John is out, so who's up?
I believe, Fred, you're up.
Fred's up, okay. So if you've had a chance to take a look at those, is someone making a motion on the September 2nd, 2021 minutes?
I will move to approve.
Joe Chadwick moves to approve the minutes from our Thursday, September 2nd meeting. Is there a second? Second, Fred. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved. Okay, correspondence?
Okay, we got a couple items. The first is a proposal to amend a moratorium, I believe, that was enacted by the town of North Branford. They seem to be proposing an adjustment to the wording of the existing moratorium to be more specific in terms of its reference to statutes and the definitions in the statutes for the different types of cannabis establishments. And we talked about some of that at the last meeting, so.
I'm not sure I understood. You said that, what was the North Branford moratorium?
Oh, they have a moratorium from allowing any of the cannabis establishments, so they have already enacted one, and they are modifying it to be much more specific in terms of the references in the moratorium to the different types of cannabis establishments and the
So they don't want to deal with it yet?
sections of the statutes. Basically, yeah, they've already done that, but now they're adjusting
adding
the
on all the
moratorium.
other-
They've been making it more specific. That's what they're basically doing, as far as I can tell. We also received communication that came through, I believe, Chuck, you and Marcy. I can pass this out for the commission rather than read the email. But the gist of it, as far as I understand it, is the person is hoping the commission would take up the idea that they want to specially provide for additional development of communities and residential developments for the over 55 age population in town, similar to Riverwalk, something like that. So I can pass that out, and it might suggest there's a sort of off the agenda topic, but the affordable housing plan is hopefully going to get underway with the kickoff meeting probably early October or maybe the third week in October. And that might be a good group to take up this idea and report back to the commission, possibly. But I'll pass that out. We also have communication from engineering firm representing the current owner of what's been known as the Beacon Estates, Beacon Hill subdivision out of Rose Hill Road. It is on the western side of Rose Hill Road before it turns around and connects up with Pent Road. This is a road all the way down, if you're not familiar, almost near the East Haven line that goes to the south from Route 1. And several years ago, a subdivision was approved, an open space residential development for a 10-lot subdivision. There was an open space component as part of it, which is required by the open space residential developments regs. The open space was dedicated. The development of the subdivision required the extension of a sewer line up or down, depending when you talk about geography or distance from Route 1. So we need a sewer line extension and a pumping station, I believe. So the cost of doing that and the amount of return from developing the 10 lots is cited by the developer as something they looked at and believe it's making the development of the subdivision cost prohibitive. So they are proposing possibly a PDD for a 22-lot attached condo project instead of the 10-lot residential development. And they would like to come in as for a conceptual discussion of having a possible PDD, Planned Development District. So I have that communication, and I can, I believe I've got some copies of the plans they've submitted, just so you could have a copy of it ahead of time. I can schedule that for a future meeting for the conceptual discussion if you like.
Yeah, I guess the regulations say that we do allow informal meetings. The issues with informal meetings is sometimes if you say something there, the developer tries to say, aha, well, you said this, blah, 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 before the public hearing, which happened by Mr. Smith when we mentioned affordable stuff and so forth. So there's a downside. You got to give any sort of disclaimers out the yin-yang anytime you have an informal meeting. Sometimes you don't want to, you got to be careful of that. That said, our regulations do authorize them, and sometimes it's a good idea before people invest a lot of money to have informal meetings. So I don't have a problem with it, although from what little I know, I'm skeptical of what the proposal is. So maybe what we should do, my suggestion would be go ahead, maybe Harry can send us background of what it is we approved and what they're doing, and then let them come in and we'll give some, let them, whatever.
This is open space that was left Beacon Hill?
No,
Back in the day?
the open space has already gone to, I think it was the town. So that's already been transferred. So it's the land that was going to be subdivided into 10 lots. That has happened. The subdivision was filed, but they want to take that 10-lot subdivision and change that to a planned development district to allow 22 attached condo units in place of the 10 single-family houses in the separate lots.
So this is up on the hill, way up?
Way up on the hill on the
Way
right, after the whatever that business is on the in back there. It's right up at the crest of the hill.
It's going up Rose Hill, just keep going up the hill.
Well, all the way up, almost all the way up. Yeah.
That's way up.
Yeah.
And what's their beef, because they got to put in a pumping station? That's
Yeah,
what
I
they
mean, when you
gotta
get,
justify
I
it?
think they're up and over a little bit, and whatever the geography is, you need to pump it up and over to get it to gravity flow down to the existing sewer line, is my understanding.
They misjudged the market, thought they could make more money with a 10-lot, subdivision, and they decided they can't make money off it, so they want to double the density.
Right,
And,
double the density.
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the exact
don't know.
cost
We
of
haven't heard
figures
yet,
of,
but
what
that's
they
what it
could
looks
make.
like.
Just on the surface, but and the only entrance is up Rose Hill to
Yes.
this property?
Right, right.
You said you had plans?
I do. I can pass, if you like, I can show you quickly, I'm not going to run it through the whole thing. I just pass it out and we can talk about it.
Of what we approved, or what?
What you approved and what's proposed, both.
Okay.
If you want.
What zone is it? It's a...
I believe it's in the R4.
So it was an R4 open space subdivision, which means the houses are kind of clustered, because they had an open space and we allowed them to do that.
So lots could be smaller, less
So
frontage, so
it's
forth.
smaller lots.
Right.
And so of these smaller lots, I guess they want to do a lot more. I don't know. That's what it sounds like. Anyway.
And there was a lot to do with that subdivision back then. There was a lot of...
I remember
forth.
Dave Gibson was the attorney then.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember it, and it took
It
a
was
while to
contentious for a while there.
Yeah, it took a while to get through, yeah, so.
Okay. So I can distribute that, and that's the end of the correspondence.
Okay. Okay, so let's go to old business. Item number 1, I understand that's at Wetlands right now, so we don't have a public hearing for that one yet. The 175 Cherry Hill Road.
Yeah, that's correct.
And items 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. That's the next phase of Summit Place, for what, 48 units or something?
Yeah, and we've set a
4,000.
public hearing for next meeting on the 7th.
Okay, so that's on our 7th.
When is it?
The 7th.
So, new business, 3 Elms Road. This is, we have a public hearing set for October 7th.
Right.
Ooh, a long day.
Yeah, we do. It is long. And Anything else under new business?
No.
Okay. Other business, we have some bonds.
I'll do this.
I have a request to establish a bond for a driveway at 85 Todd's Hill Road. The bond is requested for outstanding driveway requirements. It is recommended that commission approve a bond in the amount of $500 for the driveway.
Is there a motion to approve the bond for the $500 for the driveway for 85 Todd's Hill Road?
So moved.
Motion by Marcy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, approved. Next one.
I have a second request for a driveway at 135 Todd's Hill Road. Recommended that the commission approve a bond in the amount of $500 for this driveway.
Is there a motion to approve that $500 bond for 135 Todd's Hill Road?
So moved.
Motion by Marcy, is there a second? Second by Fred. Further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Planners report.
Okay. Okay, I think we talked at the last meeting about the accessory dwelling unit provision of one of the bills is passed at the legislative session that just ended this year. So I do have some information for you. I've copied an excerpt from Public Act 21-29, which contains the provision that basically takes our existing accessory apartment regulations and says you can no longer do it that way. You have to do it the way is mandated in the state statute, unless you opt out, they call it, through a process also laid out in the state statute. So let me pass that out. And we could do this in the planner's report. I mean, if you want to add it to the agenda, whatever, you know, I think it's. So in a moment, you'll have it in front of you. And I think we covered this a little bit at the last meeting or the meeting before that, maybe even. But it provides for basically a mandate that municipal zoning regulations would designate locations as zoning districts within the municipality in which accessory apartments are allowed, provided that at least one accessory apartment should be allowed as of right on each lot that contains a single-family dwelling, and no accessory apartment shall be required to be an affordable accessory apartment, which is the way Branford does it right now. After a little bit of wrangling, we now have it right, and we've been requiring the deed restrictions in every in every accessory apartment created. So that's the fallback. On the next page, page 15, the bottom is the start of the process that's outlined to opt out, which requires a few things. So if you go to the back of this, basically, the commission may, by a 2/3 vote, start the process to opt out, which requires you to hold a public hearing, which is basically follows the provisions of a typical public hearing you would hold. And then once that's held, you would need to affirmatively decide to opt out. You need to do that within the time period outlined in the statute, which is by January 1st, 2023. You would need to state upon the record of that, the records of the commission, the reasons for such decision, and publish a notice of the decision, which we typically do with all decisions, within 15 days in a newspaper. And then the municipality's legislative body, or potentially its board of selectmen, depending how you interpret the wording here, would need to, by a 2/3 vote, also opt out. So we could certainly, if you wanted, it sounded like the commission was pretty clear you wanted to opt out, my recollection of the discussion, you could direct me as staff to set up a public hearing for the first reasonable date, which would probably be the second meeting in October on the 21st, to start the process.
Yeah, we got time, sooner the better.
Yeah, it's going to take some time to go through this, so,
Time to
yeah.
go through RTM and all that.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, we may as well get started. I think so. What zones do we not allow accessory apartment in?
We do not allow them in the, I think it's the R1 and the R2 right now. So it's the
it's
R3, R4, and
6,000 or
R5.
under, but all the ones above that we do.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
It's included in the regulations of all zones, right? What the state is saying.
The state would say every place you have a single-family dwelling, either
Right.
allowed in the regs or just existing, even in an industrial zone, if you have a single-family house, you have to allow an accessory apartment in it. That's
What
my
about a
understanding of it. I believe that's interpreted as a single-family dwelling. I'm
Well,
not
it's a
sure about
dwelling.
that, but, yeah.
Technically, or, well, depends how you look at it, but.
I don't know how that would actually practically work, because there's some minimum requirements for size and, that's in the statute, but.
They never took into account the size of the property. I mean, somebody's, like what we just saw tonight with these cottages that were just seasonal cottages now are being, changed into year-round housing, but they're still close,
Yeah.
very close.
No, it's a one-size-fits-all provision in
Yeah.
the statute. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
And I think what happens too, Harry, is the problem comes to us this size, we can create the problem. So like with, I would always think that with these, like Sunrise and Cove and even Branford, you would think that their associations would have kind of strict rules and regulations on what they can and can't do. But what happens, I don't think they do, and then the problems come to us. And we have to be the judge, and almost be the bad guy for stuff that we didn't create, neither the regs created or whatever.
Yeah. So, I certainly understand the concerns that you've expressed in the discussion so far, so it takes away your control and your fine-tuning, if you will, of, how you allow it. So, I don't know that you appropriately would need to take a vote to direct me to set public hearing.
So we'll make a motion to authorize Harry to schedule public hearings so we can opt out of the mandatory accessory apartment provisions of the recent state statute.
So moved.
Moved by Joe, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. There's also, I think I covered this in my review of the legislation also, is a similar type of thing, but it relates to parking. There's a section of the state law now that mandates that the municipality, Planning and Zoning Commission, can't require more than one parking space for each studio or one parking space for each one-bedroom dwelling unit, and no more than two parking spaces for each dwelling unit with two or more bedrooms. So you don't get to pick anymore unless you also opt out. Right now, our regulations require, it's the same for efficiency as studio in the one bedroom, it's one space. But for an apartment, two bedrooms or more, the parking requirements in our regulations are for 2.5 spaces. And I think we've talked for a little bit, we don't have guest parking requirements, but I think we've asked for it for a couple projects. It sort of depends on the layout and the circumstances, but this would lock you into what the state law mandates. So you can also opt out, similar process. Identical process. You would have to have a 2/3 vote, the public hearing, the reasons on the record, the publication in the newspaper, and then it needs to go to the legislative body or possibly the Board of Selectmen. Yeah. I'm sorry?
For a half a space.
For a half a space, but it's, I don't know what they're going to do in the future, so I really don't know. I mean, it's really totally up to you whether you want to let it ride or you want to...
Do you have an opinion as a planner, what's a good parking ratio for for that?
You know, the only concern I really have with it is not so much the 2.5 versus the 2, it's the provision to possibly require guest parking. So I think that does become, you know, certainly hasn't been an issue in the last year and a half, but as much, but I think that can, for a new development, you may want to consider some of that. And I think quite a few developments have added it. For example, I believe Riverwalk has some designated guest parking because, you know, it's tight in certain spots. And there's a recognition that, you know, you need it sort of scattered throughout in case somebody's having a party and you don't want people parking on a tight, narrow road. And
Do our regulations now authorize us to do guest parking?
I don't believe they do. We've done it, I think, more as a, you know, asking, requesting, or the developers proposed it because they think they really need it for their own marketing purposes. I think you could probably require it for compliance with the special exception criteria if that's part of the process. I have seen guest parking required in other communities. They've had standards for it. I mean, I can't quote you off the top of my head. I don't know if it's, you know, it's like one guest parking for every number of parking spaces or something. I think we had a standard like that, one additional. That's all my real concern at the moment. I mean, this could morph around again, too, in terms of, you know, limiting your ability to require parking even more. It's possible, but I think you'd have hopefully a chance to opt out of that. You know, it doesn't have a time limit on when you opt out, so you could opt out, like unlike the other one, which you have to opt out by January 1st, 2023. There's no time limit on the opt out here. You could let it go and then decide.
When's the effective date?
I'm sorry?
When is the effective date?
The effective date is October 1st.
Oh, so unless we do something by October 1st, we're already...
That's my reading of it.
Really?
You know, the accessory dwelling unit section has a provision that says, basically, even though it's effective on the January 1st of this year, that until January 1st, 2023,
right.
If you have provisions like we do for accessory dwelling units, you can use those even though they contradict the statute, which is odd because I always understood that the statute trumps the regulations as soon as there's a difference.
But it's different for the parking?
The parking doesn't say either way, so I would think they're effective probably October 1st.
Okay, so that preempts our regs unless we opt out?
That's my understanding of the legality of it. I probably should seek opinion of town council to be sure, but...
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe we want to have... I mean, it sounds like we don't require guest parking now.
We don't, but I think this would limit you a little more in that direction from allowing that, from requiring that, so.
Okay. Well, I don't know, maybe 2.5 is good. I have no idea.
I mean, more and more people and more cars in each dwelling unit, it seems to be the trend. I mean, I live on a street and a half with, you know, some rental units, and it seems like everybody's apartment, there's, you know, up to 2 or 3 cars along with a unit. It seems to be just as many cars as a single-family dwelling, sometimes even more. So.
Okay.
I mean,
it just on principle, we should opt out. I mean, I understand the need for state uniformity from a building code standpoint. And it's, you know, that's a very realistic thing. From a zoning standpoint, that is, you know, pretty much home rule. I mean, you really need to make those judgments within your own little political jurisdiction. And it just as a message and a stopgap measure, just to enact the you know, to say no, we're not going to do that. We can make our own parking regulations.
Do we have to get RTM approval if we opt out of this too?
It's exactly the same process as the accessory dwelling unit thing.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, I agree as a matter of theory. I don't want the state telling me what to do. I want to make my own mind. I mean, just like I don't want to tell the state to tell me you have to get vaccinated, but I'm going to get vaccinated. But I don't know. You got to make the second step is, you know, what do you go to? We're going to have to go to the RTM report of selectmen when someone says, so why are you opting out? If I'm an RTM, I'm saying, why did you choose that? And we got to have a reason. You know, and we got to say we think 2.5 is better than 2, and maybe the answer is yes because whatever. But that's why before we make that choice, I think we got to have the rationale,
right?
Because we're gonna have to justify it.
We need a rational parking system.
Right.
But to just have an arbitrary legislative action become that which we are bound to, that hurts.
Yeah, no, I suppose we could opt out and change it ourselves to 2. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there's sort of, I suppose you could do that, so you don't, but I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm a little more curious about what a good parking is before we take that step. That's what I wonder. I mean, we still may want to do it, but can you look at that? I mean,
Yeah, we can look at that.
Yeah.
As we have time.
right.
Probably too much to ask to tie it in together with the housing thing, right?
There's a thought to that because you just be going through the
Because it's all
process
you- now you got
basically for
everybody
both
working
things,
on it.
one shot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I
The
mean,
same people can do both at the same time, same night. Cut some.
I mean, you can follow up,
But it's gotta be-
and say,
you gotta-
look, we may easily revisit our parking requirements, but we'd like to have the authority to change them if we want to.
But we have to have some justification, like Chuck just said.
Yeah.
What are our reasons?
Yeah, if we
We
can
just
opt
have
out any
simple.
time, then I suppose we can opt out any time. There's no expiration.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think the reason it's based on the uniqueness of our community and that, we might have many areas where streets don't allow for on-street parking and, as development expands, we need to make sure it can be accommodated on site and, and just as we have more apartments, who's to say a couple isn't going to rent a studio apartment for affordability reasons and need 2 cars to get to work?
Right. I mean,
there's
I've
unique.
got some neighbors that have a private car and then they have some kind of commercial vehicle, and there's 2 cars for one person in an apartment.
Right.
Because that's just how they're.
Their
that's their
business
life.
vehicle and their personal vehicle, yeah.
Right.
I know we reduced a lot of parking requirements in like 2008 when we went through that round of regulation revisions. And I know we did it particularly for commercial. We used to have obscene parking stuff for retail. And then we reduced it because, the whole theory then is that we got too much blacktop, it's big waste, it's suburban sprawl, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if we did it so much for the residential thing, though.
I could go back and comparatively check the regs and see if it was changed at all, but we tell you that much.
If we've already changed it, because we've already reduced it. I don't know.
And does that consider garages as parking relative to surface, or does the garage get
spaces count.
negated and it's still?
No, garage spaces count.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's mainly multifamily, right? Is that what we're talking about?
They are, doesn't say, it's any unit, any residential unit, the way I read it. It doesn't say just for multifamily.
What's the reason for the state changing? Do they have a reason for this?
I know the reason why for the ADU, accessory dwelling units, it's sort of connected with affordable housing. It's helping decrease the supply of housing. One way you address affordable housing is forget all this deed restriction stuff, but just increase the supply. And if we allow it as a right, then then people can do it, and you don't have these, communities just slowing you down and whatever. I mean, in some ways, it's a property rights move. Hey, look, we're giving you more rights. We're taking the government off your back and saying you can do it, and you don't even have to ask them. It's as of right. So that's the theory for. The theory against, which is the twofold reasons. One is that for what you talked about, for Branford, we have a small community, very small lots, particularly anything by waterfront, where things are squeezed as is, and if you can, automatically as a right put in a second dwelling unit, you will have parking problems, you will have some problems. It's the units are too small. And the second is what they're saying, you can do it as of right without having a public hearing. We require public hearings, and I like public hearings. What that does is it says, if I want to do this, I got to tell my neighbor. And the neighbor may think that, wait a minute, I bought a house in a single family zone. You're making a duplex out of it, this whatever. And so it makes you get along with your neighbors. Okay, I'll put up some screening or do whatever. And it helps, I think, make people more interact and be more, so I think that is a good process. And if you make it as a right, they can say, heck with you. I'm just going to do it and whatever. So I like the process of working with the neighbors. So those are my two rationales as to why we like ours versus the state.
So what's the rationale with the parking?
I'm sorry?
With the parking, what's,
The rationale for the parking,
why are they changing it?
I think they did it because they think there's the same reason we decreased our parking back in 2008 is it's sort of twofold. One is that there's too much impervious surface. That's what pavement is. As parking is part of that. You know, we don't need it. And then I remember all this parking, and we would allow people to hold parking reserved now and allow more green space, whatever. And I think that there's sort of twofold rationale. One is that let's make that on the residential side too. When you go to these apartment and condo complexes, which are for multifamily, there's just a lot of empty spaces. You don't need it, and that affects the costs. That means you can get less housing, and it makes it more expensive because you have more land and everything else. So that's the theory. It's more of the affordable housing, you know, that both the environmental thing, pavement's bad, and that it also, you know, takes up more land and makes housing more expensive.
And during the pandemic, on Friday afternoons, at the end of the news on WSHU, they were interviewing on a regular basis housing activists who were very, very involved in helping to shepherd the stuff through the legislature.
Right.
And the parking is sort of not necessarily hand in glove, but they're, you know, sort of at least holding pinkies as far as being related to increasing for affordable housing.
It is. It's an interesting coalition here that you have the one hand, what I think of as affordable housing, which I think, you know, the left-wing radicals who, you know, government, we need to, you know, there's that side of it. And then you got the private property home builders people who are saying, you got too much government regulation, you know, get off my back and whatever. So you got the right wing and the left wing, and they sort of coalesced on some of these things. Yeah. And it got through the legislature because you had an interesting alliance, you know, so it's, yeah, it's the way the world works. Anything else, Harry?
Yeah, and as, again, another part of this bill, Public Act 2129, the legislature also, I'd gone over this and sort of forgot about it. I did go over it quickly, but my understanding, well, right now, there is a section of the town ordinance that allows the commission to require an applicant to pay the cost of a peer review of a traffic study. So that's the only charge the commission can tag on to an applicant. I believe other towns, I understand by ordinance, you could expand that possibly so that the commission could potentially say, look, this project needs geotechnical review. Like we had that application for Gould Lane, which required really an LEP to look at it. And fortunately, there was some money to cover that, but it took a while to get all that in place. And that really did delay the process quite a bit. And the only reason that happened was because of the extra time we were granted by the executive order during COVID. There is other projects, for example, I mean, a lot of these rock slopes have been established. We've got one right now. It's Sterling Ridge, and the way they were going to blast it, the information they submitted indicated it was solid rock. They ended up basically pulling the slope down, and it's pretty mixed. There's some solid rock there, but there's a lot of not. There's a lot of rubble and a lot of other material. So at this point, I'm not sure it's going to be certifiable as a rock slope, which puts this development in the position of, you may recall, there's 2 units this development that are within feet of the slope. The slope goes up. It's not a 1-on-3. It's more like this. It goes right up at the edge of the conservation easement, which is the rest of this little knoll, which is behind the Harrison house. It's that area over by Richlands. So I think if we had the ability to charge the applicant for a review by an appropriately credentialed professional, he may have told us, look, you didn't get enough borings or whatever you would need to determine the fact that that is actually rock solid rock under there or not, which would have prevented, and right now the developer is in a position possibly of having to go get a variance to allow the project to go ahead. And just discussed that with him actually this morning. So that's another example of, and also there, you certainly remember last year we had a couple of periods where we had, I think, 20 applications on the agenda for a few months in the fall, a few months in the spring. We're down now, thank God, but that could happen again. It's a very busy economy. So at any rate, there's a new provision in the statute that specifically allows municipality by regulation, it says, to require an applicant to pay the costs, reasonable fees associated with review by consultants with expertise in land use of any particular technical aspect of an application, such as traffic, stormwater, doesn't preclude anything else, for the benefit of such commission or board. And it spells out how you count, you have to take the money, put it in a separate account, collect interest, and pay back the remainder of it. But I'm just going to pass this out to you. You might want to take a look at it. I think it might be a really beneficial direction to go in, to give whoever is designated, the commission or staff or whatever, or administration, the ability to do that, so that we can, it's for the applicant's benefit as well. It could keep the application process moving more quickly. It allows us to be a little more certain of our recommendations to you, and potentially your reliance on your decisions and the information in front of you when you're making them. So I'll just pass it out. I know it's getting a little late, but we could talk about it another night if you want. I mean, I don't know what your immediate feedback is, but I have to explore the process a little further. I don't know whether by regulation means the commission can adopt it,
Yeah,
or
that's my question.
the municipality as
What
legislative
section
body.
are they amending? What section of the statute are they amending? It doesn't say. It starts with
826? Number 826B?
No, the 820. It's a reference back to 826. I've got the bill here, so hold on a second. I'll tell you that.
because 826 is the subdivisions.
No, there's a provision right before that that describes how the fees, the commission can set fees with respect to subdivision, but I think it's the legislative body can set fees by ordinance, and that supersedes the establishment of fees by the commission for subdivision.
So do we know if this is the legislative body or the zoning commission? It says
I don't know that. No, I don't know that.
You can't increase fees for 830G.
Well, there's a bunch of things here, so there's more. A lot of things are squeezed in this little piece of legislation. That is a change to section 81C.
Okay, that may be by ordinance. I mean, that's what I remember. I don't know.
Yeah, I really, It sounds, since they mentioned the word municipality.
Yeah.
Rather than specifically the commission.
But it's weird, it says by regulation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can talk about that at another meeting, if you like. And that's all I have outside of just to reemphasize we're starting off the affordable housing plan, hopefully on October 4th, or I believe it's the 18th, it's the other date.
Okey doke. Okay, so anything else, anyone?
Move to adjourn?
Okay, Marcy moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Second, we'll give it to Fred. All in favor?
Aye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.